Chapter 2. In her home office, Stella was surrounded by giant monitors full of penguin images. The National Geographic project was a highlight of her day. As an artificial intelligence researcher and developer at LED AI Technologies, which they insisted on calling LAT, she typically designed and built deep learning for IT systems, making sure the servers that ran the largest companies in the world were not vulnerable to attacks from hackers. She spent her days training models to find new patterns in data that identified signs of danger. Where were logins coming from? What does a user typically click when they sign in? Big Brother monitoring was built into the licensing agreements, and it was her job to exploit the data. Her goal was to give her teams a millisecond head start on the bad guys and stop attacks. But that is not what would lead to her demise. Today, she got paid to play with machine learning and image detection algorithms to count the number of unique penguin faces. Convincing LAT to sponsor the National Geographic Antarctica expedition was a stroke of brilliance and a welcome change of pace. But it was this penguin project that set off the unfortunate chain of events. Stella's attention had always gravitated toward the improbable. Sure, she shared the tech world's fascination with AI and its potential to transform industries. But Stella thrived on pushing artificial intelligence in unexpected directions, harnessing its capabilities to tread the line between brilliant and absurd. She was driven by a simple belief: to leave the world just a little better than she'd found it. And she had an enduring commitment to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Two decades ago, March of the Penguins had hit the big screen, and Stella had been captivated by the emperor penguins braving the harsh Antarctic landscape to raise their young. She could still hear Morgan Freeman narrating, "In the harshest place on earth, love finds a way." Few animals tugged on her heartstrings like penguins did. Their quirky personalities, fierce family bonds, and resilience in the face of a brutal climate made them creatures she felt compelled to defend. Working with National Geographic had been a dream she'd carried with her since watching that movie. Knowing that her software would soon be in Antarctica, tracking penguins across the vast expanse of snow, breaking up the endless white landscape with clusters of waddling birds, felt like a monumental win. The scientists were primarily focused on studying microplastics, examining how these tiny pollutants had reached even the Earth's most remote corners. Stella admired their dedication, but for her, something else beckoned. While the scientists collected soil samples, they'd also be installing satellite-linked, solar-powered cameras across the tundra to document the project. And that's where Stella's true passion ignited. She made the connection between capturing images of the penguins and her work back home, processing and analyzing endless data streams. What if they didn't just take pictures? What if they could identify, track, and name individual penguins? This simple yet radical idea took hold. They could use the cameras not only to document, but to create a connection, letting the world into the daily lives of individual penguins. Much like Child Fund's iconic commercials, where a specific child's story helps connect people to a cause, one could adopt and follow a specific penguin sharing its survival story. This would reach beyond research and data. It would make people care deeply about a bird on the other side of the world. It could turn statistics on microplastics into a survival story worth sharing and taking part in. And that, in Stella's eyes, made all the difference. The scientists are missing the point, she had argued. If they want change, we need to start connecting to hearts. People will care more about Primrose, the newly hatched chick choking on plastic, than they will care about the soil. She had convinced Lat to let her proceed as long as she finished the plastics algorithms. With a little imagination and some incredible coding, Stella built a machine learning algorithm to identify the impacted penguins themselves. People think writing an algorithm to detect an animal is challenging, and it is, but it used to be so much more difficult. In the past, if Stella wanted to teach a machine to recognize a penguin, she would have needed to gather hundreds, if not thousands, of images, painstakingly dissect them, label each one by hand, and use them to train a model. Every tiny distinction between one bird and the next would have been a manual process, hours of work that felt like chipping away at a glacier with a teaspoon. But those days were gone. Now, with so many pre-built, friendly algorithms available at her fingertips, Stella could just grab an image detection model from an open-source website, like Hugging Face, where people had already done the hard work of building the foundations. She could feed in old videos of penguins and use unsupervised learning. With this, Stella went from zero software to master penguin inspector by using tools that detected patterns on their own. It was as good as if Stella personally watched the penguins on video, noticing their subtle differences, figuring out who was who just by their markings and quirks. The algorithm could even cluster the penguins by similarities and group them without being told which was which. Stella had chosen a convolutional neural network, an algorithm particularly good at detecting patterns in images. The network started by finding edges and basic shapes, beak, belly, flippers, and then moved on to more complex features as it worked through the layers. It learned by sorting through piles of penguin data and clustering the birds into species based on the visual features it picked up. It had been a stroke of genius aided by open-source software. The beauty of these models laid in their adaptability. She could continue feeding them new data, allowing the system to grow smarter with each iteration, refining how it identified penguins, even distinguishing one family from another in the chaos of an Antarctic colony. By adding in location and timestamp data, the model could observe the penguins like she did, picking up the details and following their journeys across the icy plains.